Hi, everybody. Let's get you up on my laptop here. All right. Now we're cooking with gas. All right. So today is all about putting the edges on some knives that I finished and basically some general touch-up work to finish the blades on them, get them looking nice and schmick, ready to be either shipped off or put up for sale. So you may notice that I have a giant, very military-looking Russian box in front of me, and many people will probably recognize this if you're into knives or you're serious about your knives. And so this is called a TS Prof, and it's the, in my humblest of opinions, the best knife sharpening system available on the market. That being said, I think it's the best manual knife sharpening system on the market. There are two types of knife sharpening systems that can fall into two categories. One is powered and one is unpowered. Unpowered basically used to be just your whetstones, just sitting there and by hand putting edges on blades. Your powered ones are the ones that actually do that with a motor and drive an abrasive wheel or otherwise against the steel until it puts the edge on. So in this particular instance, we're talking about a manual sharpening system. When it comes to manual sharpening systems, you've got things like the Wicked Edge sharpening system and the Edge Pro sharpening system, and they all have their sort of fanboys and their communities around them and things like that. But if you ask me, nothing beats the TS Prof. Made over in Russia and shipped everywhere in the world. I saved for a very long time to get one of these. I will say they are not cheap, but if you are serious about getting an edge that will, it's so fine that it will give you a cut by looking at it. You don't even have to be near it. You could be across the other side of the room. You'll get cuts from your knives. They're so sharp. This thing is insane. And this is just the basic kit. It comes with all these different add-ons and things. So not sponsored at all. As much as I would love to be sponsored by TS Prof, I bought this with my own money after doing extensive research and being obsessed with knives and blades and sharpening for many, many years. Even before I got into blacksmithing, I was a big sharpening nut and did it all by hand then. Now, the reason that I have gone with something like this over a powered sharpening system is because I like doing things sort of off-grid, no power required. If I was to get something that I could plug into a wall and make the whole process easier, I would actually recommend the Tormek sharpening systems. Those things are insane and will get you a really good edge. If you're on more of a budget, you can actually get some things called paper wheels, which are very good. You can put them on a normal bench grinder and get some pretty insane edges that way. Take a bit more maintenance that wear away a little bit differently to something like this or a whetstone. Also, you can actually, if you just get one of those standard little cheap, and you've all seen them, little 1x30 belt grinders. You start at something like a 180 grit belt and work your way up to a 1000 grit belt, and then put a leather stropping belt on top of it with some compound on there. You will get a pretty serious edge as well. Although that's better for repairing damaged edges or putting an initial edge on something. And that's kind of what we're doing today. We're doing an initial edge and also resharpening my pocket knife, which I'll be doing first to show you how the system works. But before we go on, I'm going to turn a fan on because it is really humid here in Brisbane. that will be a bit better. So, alright, what we're going to do is I'll show you what we're working on. Firstly, there's going to be me sharpening up my everyday carry pocket knife. Now, like I said, I've been a blade nerd for many, many years, and I have gone through so many everyday carry pocket knives. I've broken more than you could imagine because I do some pretty hardcore stuff with them. You know, a lot of people say, oh, don't use your pocket knife on cardboard, you'll ruin the edge and things. I use them as a tool. To me, a knife is a tool. And so I open boxes, I cut up cardboard, I process bark into fire starting strips, I make feather sticks, I go bushwalking and use it for eating and all sorts of things, you know, get muck in there and juice of fruits in there and things, and really I mistreat my knives horribly, and because of that has led to me breaking a great many knives, and I've carried a lot of different ones over the many years, but the last probably 5 years I've stuck with the exact same knife. And I'm not actually a fan of this brand. They don't really generally impress me with their knives. But this one is the Essie Zancudo in the green. It's got a really nice opening mechanism, very crisp, you know. If you're really in a pinch, you can sort of wrist flick it open. It's not spring assisted though, as you can see. But it's got a nice little crisp open, very firm lock, and a surprising quality steel which holds a very decent edge. And this one actually held its edge under some pretty heavy use for about a month after I edged it on this. And I'm talking some much more abusive use than you would expect a knife to go under. But this one has gone through rainforests with me, it's gone through all sorts of things. I even lost it once. I dropped it and it stayed in a pile of mud, half submerged, for 3 days before I found it again. And I just cleaned it, oiled it, and it's still going. So this is going to be getting a bit of a retreat. I've oiled it already, so I'm just going to re-edge it, and I'll give it a rub down. Once we're done with this, you'll remember this from the last live stream. This was the knife I made for my friend in Germany. It's all set now, and you can see how beautiful it looks in the sheath. That hairy oak handle is great. And this blade is actually very, very thin along its edge, but it is not an actual blade yet. It's got no actual edge. So I'll be putting an initial edge on it. So it's the first edge this blade has ever actually seen, and it will be the final edge. So that'll be interesting if you've never seen an edge put on by hand before. That's going to be happening with this one. In addition to that, I've got this knife that I've finished. This one has had an edge put on. You can actually see that edge. Look at that. Pow. Nice finish on that. However, the grind needs to be cleaned up a little bit. Got a little bit of a pattern surface rust on it, and actually, no, I don't think it's rust. I think what it is rogue dye from the sheath. It may not have dried completely. I may have been a little bit overzealous putting it into a sheath after I finished the dyeing, but this one is just going to get a little bit of touch up from that. So it won't be going through this, but it will be getting a touch up. And finally, you may remember this from the last stream as well. This one needs to have an edge put on. Also needs to have its grind cleaned up a little bit. So this one is currently edge free as well, and it will be having an edge put on. The handles will also be getting their final coat of oil. The blades will be oiled, and the sheaths will all be being treated with a treatment wax. So you'll get to see that. So a little bit to get through, kind of like a Alex completing his chores stream, but it'll be good to actually see these finished. So first thing we're going to do is set up the TS prop system. It's pretty straightforward to set up, but then there's a little bit of a tuning process to make sure that it's all lined up properly. So we'll get on top of that. Now, if you follow Sam Towns, which you should, you need to recommend he gets one of these. This is a cut-proof glove. When you're sharpening knives or handling sharp knives, you throw one of these on. And when you've got a knife, you cannot cut yourself with it. Doesn't matter how sharp it is, Sammy. I'm watching. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so strop block. We'll use that later. Renaissance wax. I swear by this stuff. If you're into knives at all, even if you're not making them, just collecting them, Renaissance wax. It's good stuff. Now this may look like overkill, but it's because it's about precision. Putting an edge on a knife. It's, when you think about it, what's the point of a knife if it doesn't have an edge? Unless it's a rapier and you're trying to just use it for piercing. So when you think about it, it's one of the most important aspects of the blade. So the more precision you can actually have during that, the better. Nothing does precision like the TS Prof. I am madly in love with this thing. One of the services I offer as a blacksmith is professional knife sharpening, and this is what I do it on. That there so you can see it nice and clearly. And this is where the magic happens. These are the whetstones that go with it. Inserting stones is as easy as that, and it will use this. Hey Sam, how's it going? So you can use most brands of sharpening stones from most systems with this beast. It's fantastic. So what we're doing, Sam, is we are putting the new edges on some of my new knives. So you'll remember this puppy came out nice, but no edge whatsoever. So a new edge is going to go on that. This one has an edge, but needs a little bit of cleaning up, which we'll do. And this one here needs an edge. It's got nothing on there, so that'll be all being done today. But first up, my daily carry needs a little bit of love. Can't stay long. Weak. I can't talk, hey. So, first thing you're really going to do with this system is get your angle right. Now, my Essie Zancudo uses a 25-degree micro bevel angle, which is pretty common for a little everyday carry pocket knife, but it is important to actually work that out. Now, I need to work out the maximum throw and minimum throw, which this one's already set up because the last time I used it, I did this knife. I place it on the micro bevel like this, and what I do is I take take this, put it in there, that's the leveling plate, zero it out, then put it here, and it's saying 25.5 degrees. So what I do is I unlock this, and I alter the angle until it is exactly 25 degrees. And that way I know, no matter where I move on this rig, it will be at exactly 25-degree bevel. And here is my favorite part about this system. It was a lot of work to get it in and aligned correctly, but now I just grab this, give it a flip, and it locks into place, 180-degree turn. I can feel that burr on there. Now I'm at a very coarse stone because I want to re-apex this. Like I said, I beat the shit out of my knives, so this actually has some little chips in it. I'm getting rid of them. And you can just basically go until you feel that burr popping on the other side, which I can just feel here. From experience with this blade, you sort of do start getting a feel for this system. This blade usually takes about 30 strokes to get there when I do it at a regular interval. If I was to make it, use it for longer between sharpens, then I would, start going by feel. But I kind of know that after roughly 30, it makes it a nice even sharpen on both sides. So now it's time to go up in stones. And that's a cool thing, I can quick change out a stone just like that, nice and easy, and I know that this is still at exactly 25 degrees because my stones are wearing at the same rate. So I'm using a single clasp at the moment here, this clamp here, holding a very small knife, so it does the trick. However, you notice this frame goes out quite wide. You can actually get these double clamps that can go out as wide as this, and you can start seeing how large of a sword or knife you can actually have in this thing. I've seen people sharpen things that are a good couple of feet long in this, and it works just fine. You've also got attachments such as this, which allow you to hold scissors in them, or planer blades, and allow you to get the good sharpening angles on those as well. So it's a universal system. And I've only got some of the attachments. I'd love to have more of them. And if you would like to help support me in getting more attachments for my TS Prof, you can buy me a coffee. I don't have my sign, but you can go to ko-fi.com/Valhalla Ironworks. Every little bit helps. Now, sharpening's all about feeling for that burr that forms on the other side. As you go up through the grits, you want to start out at a lower grit, depending on how bad to stake the knives in. Let's just say you're doing a sharpen on a pretty rough looking sort of knife. Start at a lower grit, like a 180 or something stone. And the most important thing, cheers Sam, the most important thing is to first apex the blade. It's essentially shaping it into that nice even pyramid. Not a pyramid with a flat top, sort of like that, and not sort of canted to either side. You want a nice even pyramid. And that apexing with a 180 grit stone, I've seen people be able to get blades that are sharp enough to shave at a 180 grit stone simply because they have apexed it to perfection, to an absolute peak point. Once you've gotten it apexed correctly, it's essentially polishing that blade down, because if you were to look at the edge under a microscope, it would actually look a lot like a mountain range at that point, because the sides of the steel is quite rough. You want to essentially polish and polish and polish that apex to form the most pristine edge that you can. And that's kind of what we're doing here. We're starting out with a 180 grit stone. We've just done, this is a 220, I think, or a 280. 220. And then we'll move on to a 400. And eventually we'll go right the way up to 1000 grit. Now 1000 grit, we'll give it a mirror finish at that stage. And a mirror finish on a properly apexed blade is a really effing sharp knife. But a lot of people go further than that. For all intents and purposes, 1000 grit is fine. You can get an incredible edge on 1000 grit. If you want to really up your game though, like I sometimes do, not on my daily carrot because I beat the hell out of it and I wouldn't want to put on all that work just to go and beat the hell out of it. I have stones that go all the way up to 10,000 grit, and hoo boy, that's a sharp blade. This one though apexes with such precision that you don't necessarily need to go up to something like 10,000 with it. I do if a customer requests it, because I continue on by hand, but the precision that this thing works under, this whole system works under, means that you get incredible edges for with almost 0 degree of inaccuracy, because this is always holding it at exactly the right angle. Right, we're really getting there now. Not sure. You can kind of see that edge of light against the dark of the bevel. You can start seeing that sheen on the edge. And that's just at 400 grit. We're going to more than double that. Why? Because we can. Practically speaking, for a beater knife like I'm using here, which is what my Zancudo is, it's not a knife I care particularly deeply about. I just am very passionate about how rugged it is. A 400 grit finish will last very, very well and is very serviceable. I mean, you compare these passes to the 180 passes, you can almost not hear it, it's just a hiss. Can almost not feel the burr. It's very fine, incredibly fine, but it's definitely there. You can catch it on your thumb. And then we go to our final pass. $1,000 grit. Hey, thanks, Sam. Once I've done this final pass, I'll lift it up to the camera so you can see just how crazy the edge becomes. There's one side done. Yeah, I am. What I've got for that is a big old kangaroo tail leather strop mounted on a block of wood with some non-slip on the background. It's all loaded up with compound. Works a treat. There we go. That's right. Get a good bit of softwood like pine, for example, and go with, like, at the end where the grain is coming up like that, and lightly draw your blade through a couple of times. Don't really put force in there, but just sort of make sure the entire edge goes down there. It really knocks off burrs, and then a good stropping brings it to just an amazing edge. But see if I can get this to focus. Might want to focus. Come on. You can kind of see how reflective that edge is. And the old thumbnail test is pretty good for that. You can sort of digging in so much it grabbed off thumbnail. Basically, if you can go in at a very acute angle into your thumbnail, and it'll just stop as it catches. And you can sort of shave your thumbnail. I don't recommend it too often, but yeah, comes out a treat. Now, I won't do the full treatment to this because it's just my beater knife, but let's have a go. Let's say the one that I did the sheath for in the last string. This one here that's going to Germany. Just a classic sax style with a little bit of a modern twist on the handle. Now during my grind, I put my edges pretty thin. So going straight to a 120 stone, I can grind in the rest of the edge very, very effectively. This thing is coarse. This is really, really coarse. And it ensures that my micro bevel stays exactly consistent with the rest of the sharpen. So once again, zero this out. I want to stick with the 25-degree bevel on this one as well. Just sitting a little bit proud of that. So I'll do a bit of a micro adjustment. There we go, 25 degrees. Yeah, for a micro bevel, I find it's the most utilitarian and durable on something that's designed for more hard work. On pocket knives, it's quite common. What do you mean inclusive? This is a seed grind, so it's this is gripped at the back, and the 25 is actually when compared to the spine of the knife. Ah, yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I find when you're using it for bushcraft, which is what this one's going to be used for, you get better control of wood with an actual 25 on the actual grind. Gives you, and also I actually became a bigger fan of that when I started using my Essie Zancudo, which actually comes with the 25 degree because it's designed for that. Previous knives that had much shallower ones closer to 15, and so it was tend to chip more, get sort of blown out when you start hacking at wood, and or especially cardboard tears up edges pretty well. So throwing the 25 on there on my smaller knives, I always kind of stick with. When I get bigger, I start bringing that right back though. But little workhorse knives like this, I find that it holds up under some really intense work. All comes down to what I make of the knives for, really. My little neck knives have closer to a 13 degree bevel, because they're just used for opening packages and things like that. They're not really ever going to go under stress. But wood, particularly for like whittling and fire sticks and things, just really pounds through blades. Yeah, whittling's good, but my, what's it called? I forgot the brand. I've got a pocket jack. Can't remember who. Flex cut pocket jack. That's the same 10 degrees inclusive. Really good for that fine detail whittling. I'm talking about like making like snare traps and things when you're betoning through wood, that sort of thing. It's I find that they tend to chip out more. So ever since I moved to the Essie Zancudo, which has the 25, I've sort of stuck with that because it works so well in the Essie, and I've never had problems with them. And if I'm doing a general purpose knife, it's always closer to. Yeah, no worries, Sam. Thanks for popping by. Hey, spreading some love. Always a pleasure. Yeah, no worries, and I'll hopefully catch your next one. I was a bit naughty and missed Sam's last live stream this morning. I was out doing chores. And they're well worth catching. It's a particularly cool one, and you should go over to his channel and check it out, because he was in the forge making some tongs, handling a hammer. It was a good show. Good to see him in the forge after all that hand sanding and knife work that he had to do for the knife show. So, as you probably caught with the discussion between Sam and I just now about knife blade angles, purpose of knives and expected use play a huge part in both the shape, the form, and the edge geometry of a knife. A large amount of it comes down to personal preference, but there are certain things that are specifically designed for certain tasks. Sort of like a splitting maul on an axe has a head that looks like that because it's designed to really push wood apart. But if you have something like a camp axe, it's got a very narrow head because you need to be able to use it for carving and all sorts of things like that. So swords and knives and things are very different. Like a kukri is designed to have a very thin neck and a big fat belly towards the tip, because all that forward weight lends itself to being able to chop. And from the back pull, the curve allows you to slice in a backwards motion very, very effectively. Whereas if you tried to do that with something like a cutlass, for example, although a cutlass is designed for chopping as well, but it doesn't have that hook factor. Kukris are also used as farming implements to be able to reap corn or wheat, whereas a cutlass would be very inefficient at reaping. A khopesh has that huge belly at the front of it because it's really designed to go from the back of a horse, and you have that added momentum from the horseback when you're running on the back of a running horse. So the shape of the blade lends itself to forward momentum. So when I'm making this, it's designed for sort of utilitarian use, so I want a nice thick hefty blade because it's never going to be used for fine detail carving or shaving or anything like that. I want something, the person that's going to doesn't necessarily, not that I know of, is particularly savvy with sharpening knives, so having a nice thick wide blade bevel on it will allow it to function very, very well for opening boxes and packets and things like that, but at the same time maintain incredible edge strength under that duress. It'll never have the fine cutting power of something that's got something like a 15-degree angle or a 12-degree angle, but it will function very, very well and effectively for general purpose stuff. So we'll move on to the next stone. I picked kind of an odd time of night to be streaming, so I just kind of had nothing in particular to do, and that, of course, led to me thinking, hey, maybe I'll live stream. When you're putting in an entirely new profile, you gotta be very wary of the actual tip, because when you're putting an edge on there, when you think about the fineness of that tip, the sharpness there is defined by the micro bevel of the blade, not by the spine. like it is in the rest of the knife. So you've got to be quite careful not to deform it, especially in the case of something like a sax, which is very, very much about the tip. Bowies are very similar, same sort of theory. Especially David Bowie's. Just you shut your mouth. Right. Feeling pretty good. .600 grit finish now. Okay. $1,000 grit. The finishing pass. You can see that shine. Yeah, that's what I like to see. Alright, so this one needs a little bit more touch up than just the blend. Nothing major. Just a touch. Okay. Kind of get that. Going for a bit of a rustic look on this one because it's a Viking sax. Can't have it looking too perfect. It was in pretty good shape. Now the handle just needs a little bit of touching before the next coat of, or last coat of Danish oil. In case anyone's wondering, this is a very high grit, 1200 grit sandpaper. Just used to get rid of a couple of little surface glitch thingies that came up. Get the Danish oil and a rag. This stuff sets like you wouldn't believe, seals the bottle shut. Now, since this is very sharp now, I've got my little cut-proof glove on. Now this is just going to be a very light finishing coat of Danish oil. This thing has been getting layer upon layer. Normally you'd be much more thorough with the coating in previous layers, but I didn't bother showing those because it's pretty boring to watch. But this is where the magic happens, when oil is applied to wood. Look at that. Now, Danish oil loves to be rubbed in. A lot of people will just sort of surface apply it and then let it dry and soak in on itself. Really get in there and rub it. Generate some friction and a little bit of warmth. It'll go so much better. This, of course, applies to natural wood handles rather than stabilized. And the beautiful thing about hairy oak is the micrograin that starts to appear. I don't know if you can see that, how well it'll come up on the camera, but just such incredible wood grain pattern. Alright, time to strop this bad boy. See if I can get that to catch the light. You can sort of see the edge shimmering there. Fabric's probably not the best thing to go by. This stuff's covered in oil. So I was silly enough to not remember to bring paper with me to show you guys. But you can see in the thumbnail just stops. It's actually taken chunks out of it. Pretty sharp. But we are not done. Our good friend Renaissance wax. Just as useful on the leather as it is on the knife. Helps waterproof it, helps preserve it, it creates a barrier that stops all sorts of greeblies from getting into the things that you want looked after. And you don't want greeblies. It is wonderful stuff. Not sure if it'll show up on camera what half of that handle is done with Renaissance wax, the other half is not. Probably doesn't show up. To the naked eye, it makes a big difference. But most importantly, it really protects your knife. They use this stuff in museums to keep things healthy and protect museum artifacts, ones that are made of wood, leather, and steel. It's just so inherently protective. There you go, Stefan, if you're watching. one knife, one sheath, one finished order, ready to use. Wear it with pride and use it with love. Well, ladies and germs, I might actually leave it at that rather than do that last knife, because, you know, what's that, almost an hour and a half in, and frankly I'm getting pretty hungry, so I will catch you guys on the next one. The next stream is likely going to be me tearing apart and redoing all the innards of my forge blower. It really needs a bit of a maintenance session and a bit of love. So if you ever want to see inside a forge blower, that would be a fantastic opportunity for you to do so, because I'm going to be pulling it to bits. It's going to be very messy, it's very, very greasy, but at the end of it, it will work a lot better, because we're starting to show signs of Brisbane actually cooling down just a little bit, and frankly I'd like to actually get some forging in if that's the case. So Stefan, if you're watching, enjoy. This will be on its way to you very shortly. Otherwise, I will catch you guys later on. I hope you're having a good weekend.